First, James Matthewson, former Labour spokesman. James, good afternoon to you. You heard what Rachel Reeves said. What do you think her greatest quality is as Chancellor?
Oh wow, it's a difficult one, that, Ian. To be honest, I mean, as a politician, she's tenacious, I guess. I mean, is that a compliment? It's certainly a quality that she has. I've seen her stand up against flack a lot of the time through her political career. She's not somebody I agree with or side with very often. That is certainly a quality that she has, but right now, I don't envy her, and I don't think she's helping herself, to be honest.
Did she say anything this morning? And I don't mean that just to be mischievous. I was listening to it, and there was a lot of, I think reasonably objective platitudes that were wheeled out. She's not alone in that. She's a politician. They all play that game. She wasn't doing a budget, so she was never going to start talking about the price of petrol or how much your cigarettes were going to cost you. I understand that as well. But I couldn't quite work out what she was doing there this morning.
No, I couldn't either. And look, Ian, I was hoping to have a lie-in today, and I was scheduled to do media a bit later, and then I started getting phone calls and texts from people saying, well, what's happening with Rachel Reeves? What's she doing? I thought, oh, she must have brought forward something to do with the budget. But when I actually got myself out of bed and listened to it, I thought, hang on a minute, there's not actually anything here. I'm a bit confused as to why this has been scheduled. So if it was to try and kind of alleviate stresses about the budget, it's done the opposite. Yeah. And if it was to try and kind of to change direction or set the tone to change direction, then the message has been completely lost in translation.
As far as I understood it, James, and I would have almost put money on this, that when we found out there was going to be this announcement, I thought, because it looks as if the smart money is suggesting there's going to be a tax rise of some sort, which breaks the manifesto pledge. I'm probably one of about, well, maybe one people in the world that thinks that you can actually break a manifesto pledge, because sometimes you might have to. However, it's not a good look. I understand that, and I'm not encouraging her to do it, but I can see how sometimes you... So I thought this was going to be a bit of a kind of a sweetener to that, an hors d'oeuvre to say, look, sometimes we have to do things that we, would rather not be doing. But there wasn't even any of that. And when she was asked about the tax rises, she totally blanked any journalist that threw the question at her.
Yeah, and we've seen this a few times with this Labour administration. There's been like an announcement that something's going to come, or there's been a press conference, and they get the attention that they want, right? They get the people talking about it, they get you running pieces about it, they get everybody with their eyes on it, and then all of a sudden nothing happens. There's no substance behind it. And you kind of think, well, is this some genius dead cat strategy to keep you looking over here while they're doing something over here? But it isn't. I mean, everybody I speak to behind the scenes hasn't got a clue why it happens. And let me just say that I really think it's important right now that the Labour Party is at a precipice. They've lost my support, right, which I'm sure they'll not be crying about, but at the end of the day, I used to work for them. If they've lost my support, and I used to work for them, you can only imagine how people who were floating voters would feel. They need to be looking to radical solutions quicker than ever. Otherwise, other radical solutions will become more appealable to people. They should be looking today, of all days, 5,000 miles across the sea to the election in New York City, where Zoran Mamdani is likely, if we believe the polls, likely to win a sweeping victory. And he's done that how? Because he is offering real economic change to people who are in desperate need of that change. That's what the Labour Party needs to be doing right now. If they're not going to do it, other people are going to do it for them.
So you agree with Kemi Badenoch that it was one long waffle bomb? I mean, full house points for a great phrase.
Listen, the first time I've ever agreed with Kemi Badenoch about anything, but yeah, it was. But also she can talk, because, if anybody waffles in British politics, it's her, because they're all waffling right now. And the more that they just waffle, the more the British public, is in despair and is likely to turn to extreme options, the likes of Nigel Farage, which, you and I have spoken many times about, and I've made my views clear on.
Well, listen, on that point, James, it's always good to get your view. James Matthewson, former Labour spokesman, he parted company with the Labour Party in terms of how he feels about their policies. Let's speak to Mitchell Palmer, economist at the Adam Smith Institute. Mitchell, good afternoon to you. Nice to have you with us. One long waffle bomb. Is that putting it politely? Because I was listening to, the only thing I could really extrapolate from this speech was that it was Brexit's fault. It was the that horrible phrase, it was the headwinds of global economies. It was, I think the pandemic was probably thrown in there. Doubtless there was something about, in fact, there was quite a lot about the Conservatives' ineptitude, of course. It seemed to be everybody's fault, apart from the current Chancellor of the Exchequer, who is, by the way, a third of her way through a parliament. She's not been there 5 minutes.
Yeah, I think that's perfectly fair. The reality is that everyone knew the OBR would have to, at some point, readjust their productivity forecast, which is what's driven this huge need, desperate need to find some money somewhere. And that chicken was going to come home to roost at some point. And Reeves has, to some extent, set herself up to fail in two places. Firstly, during the election, when Labour ran such a small target campaign, they had no mandate for either tax increases, which I don't think would be a good idea, but it is a way to balance the books, or spending cuts. And then secondly, during that last budget, when she said that she wouldn't be coming back for more. Then she tried to get sensible welfare reform passed through her parliamentary party, couldn't do that. So at this point, she is running out of options if she's unable to get spending under control.
The Brexit thing is interesting. I keep hearing this. We are, a decade on now. You thought, that those old arguments would have been long gone, but suddenly they've been revived again. I keep hearing people talk about this. We're 100 billion quid worse off, and in the next 10 years that could be 300 billion quid, etc. What is the truth of that?
I don't think there's too much truth in that. For starters, that estimate is, of course, just an estimate from the OBR that is as fallible as any other economist estimate. We have to be humble as a profession about that. But also, if we look at those other European countries which remain in the EU, the UK has performed terribly, it is true, but so have they. The reality is that our underperformance is a Europe-wide sclerosis because our economies are simply nowhere near as dynamic as that across the Atlantic in the US, or in fact as some of those rising stars in Europe such as Poland or Hungary, even Italy to be quite frank, are. So yes, it is true that Brexit may have had a small impact on the trade side, but the bulk of the productivity slowdown is fundamentally a Western Europe-wide sclerosis.
Can Labour turn the economy around, Mitchell?
Well, we have to live in hope, because...
Is that all we have? Is that just literally, it is kind of almost ecclesiastical? We've got to go to church at the weekend and get on our knees and pray. There's nothing tangible out there that you could look at as an economist and say, OK, I might not agree with her, but I can see what she's going to do here and it might just work. Is there any of that in there?
There is one obvious massive thing, which is getting the planning system fixed. The Labour Party and the new Housing Secretary have made a lot of good noises about that. We saw some good movement on the changes to affordable housing requirements in London, which unfortunately are temporary. But there is a slim chance, and if Labour wants to generate economic growth and therefore fix their fiscal problems, they are going to have to lean hard on on the planning reforms, and they're going to have to be very, very radical.
And an email we just got, or a message we got in from Phil in Thurrock, says, didn't she already fix the foundations? I think she has previously claimed that she'd fixed the foundations. She talked about envelopes and all the rest of it. And life was going to be tickety-boo a couple of months ago.
Yes, I mean, and to be fair to the Chancellor, she didn't know that the productivity downgrade would happen now. She also perhaps couldn't have expected that her backbenchers would stab her in the back and refuse to back sensible welfare reforms. But nonetheless, she only left herself £10 billion in headroom at that last budget, which is, it's a lot to you and me, but when we're talking about a budget that's more than £1 trillion, £10 billion is pocket change. Yeah. So if you're going to leave yourself with that little headroom, you can't be surprised when all of it is evaporated.
Maybe she's just not that good at this.
I mean, the reality is that everyone, and this is something that I will sympathise with her. Any chancellor, perhaps not from any party, but any chancellor would face somewhat similar problems. There are definitely ways she could have improved the delivery, and certainly she didn't need to go through this sort of torturous process of coming back again and again. But the reality is that the fiscal situation in the UK is broken and has been broken since, well, COVID, but possibly before. So someone is going to have to fix it. It seems Rachel Reeves might be dragged kicking and screaming into fixing it, but she certainly doesn't seem like she's grabbed that particular bull by its horns.
Not yet. That's true. Mitchell, thank you, sir, for that. Mitchell Palmer, an economist at the Adam Smith Institute. I think Adam Smith will be turning in the proverbial at the thought of what he heard this morning.